A dark horse has entered the sweepstakes for Alex Bregman, and could we see a signing of Max Scherzer to the Atlanta Braves this week? That and more ahead here at the Upside. And welcome into MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on New Year's Day, about 9 o'clock Central Time. Appreciate you taking some time out on your New Year's celebrations. Thoughts and prayers are with the families of those impacted by the attacks over the last day or so. Really, heart-wrenching stories that we're hearing from all kinds of victims from all walks of life. Lots of crazy stories out there. So, hope you and yours are safe. That you enjoyed your New Year's and got to spend time with your families, as some of those that had plans to do the same were unfortunately unable to do so. So hopefully you guys had a great New Year's, and let's get into some baseball coverage. Welcome in, Anthony. Welcome in, Holly. We'll begin tonight with Alex Bregman. The market around him still stems between the Detroit Tigers and the Boston Red Sox. A new information is starting to come about as far as the Boston Red Sox angle of this, and that Rafi Devers, the original thought process was that, hey, Bregman's a better defender. He'll easily move over to first base. That would make Cassis expendable. There could be a trade there. That at least was the prevailing wisdom up until this afternoon, when John Heyman was able to uncover that Devers is unwilling to move to first base and he would stay at third. If the Red Sox are interested in bringing in Bregman, it's going to have to be either as a first baseman or as a second baseman. How likely is that to happen? Well, I would put it at very unlikely at this point. He still doesn't say that the Red Sox are necessarily out of it, but just that the Devers' unwillingness to move off of third base might throw a wrench in that plan as far as upgrading their offense. They were looking for a major upgrade as far as a right-handed bat to that lineup, and it looks like they may have to go elsewhere to bring it in. Let us know in the comment section what you think about this decision for the Boston Red Sox, because for me, this was really the one big offensive piece that they could bring in this offseason that would satisfy Boston Red Sox fans. Remember, the problem isn't that the Red Sox haven't been trying to win or haven't been trying to add pieces around the periphery of this team, on the lower cost side of things. It was that their unwillingness to spend big free agent dollars in the open market. And here, once again, one player who could fit really, really well on that team. You'd have to imagine Devers would have to move off of third base at some point anyway. As he gets a little bit older, Bregman being a little bit younger and a better shortstop, third base, second base option, he would get the ability to handle the hot corner there for Boston, and he would look great in a Red Sox uniform hitting it over the Green Monster. His swing was tailor-made for that ballpark, and it looks like they may have to go elsewhere. So Looks like it's Detroit Tigers and the possibility of the Toronto Blue Jays. Those are John Heyman's two picks as far as where he might go. The dark horse that has entered the chat is the Chicago Cubs. Now, of course, they have a young guy in Matt Shaw that's looking like he's going to make the Major League team at some point with the Cubs roster. But remember, the Cubs set out this offseason with a goal. What was that goal? To go all in for 2025. They make the trade for Kyle Tucker. They lose Paredes. They lose Cam Smith, who is now the #1 prospect in the Astros system. You don't do that move and then just call it good. The original thought process there was, hey, we bring in Kyle Tucker. We save on Bellinger's money. Maybe we can get somebody to take Suzuki's contract. If we can't, oh well. We'll at least get some of that money off of Bellinger. We'll bring in Jesus Luzardo as a low-cost #5 starter in our rotation with upside of being an ace if he's healthy and can throw more than 100 innings for only the second time in his career. But so be it if we don't get it done. Medicals don't work out. And so we'll just go into free agency and bring in a starting pitcher to round out our rotation and a high-leverage relief arm. Doesn't look like that's the plan right now. Heyman is hearing that the Chicago Cubs are at least kicking the tires on Alex Bregman as a possibility for third base. Now remember, Matt Shaw being a young player, I'd imagine they think they can flex him wherever they need him to go. Move him over to second base if they trade Nico Horner, move him to an outfield spot. Those are all possibilities. But getting a bat like Alex Bregman would certainly indicate that they really mean it when they say they're all in for 2025. Let us know in the comment section what you think about the Chicago Cubs entering the chat for Alex Bregman. Do you think he ultimately gets a deal done with the Detroit Tigers, who still seem pretty far apart in the money? But let us know in the comment section where you think Bregman ultimately goes. Appreciate you guys joining us. Let's go ahead and check out a few of these comments. Anthony, in your honest opinion, is it easier to develop pitching and trading it for elite hitting, or developing elite hitters and trading it for pitching? The better way you want to go is to develop elite pitching, because those are so few and far between that you're not going to trade it once you do get it. So as far as developing pitching, absolutely you'd rather go about it that way. Hitters are easier to produce. Now you can trade some of those elite hitters to really get some elite pitching prospects once they get up to the major league level. But as far as, if you're looking for a fast track to get back to a contending team, to a wild card eligible team, I'd give you the Milwaukee Brewers. They did it by getting some really good position player prospects anyway, and kind of piecemealing their rotation together. Is that a great way to win a World Series? No. Is it a great way to win in the 162 game regular season? Absolutely. And the Brewers did a great job of that last year. The Cardinals right now have some really good offensive pieces, both at the major league level and in the minors. They have some pitching coming, but you can see how they're looking to build this team right now is offense first, supplement with pitching thereafter. The Rangers, you look at the way they built this team up, they really haven't been had any success as far as developing minor league pitching. They're hopeful for Kumar Rocker, they're hopeful for Jack Leiter and others. They've got some really good surprising candidates that are coming up through the minors right now as well on the pitching side. But look at how their starting pitching really has evolved over the last, decade, 2 decades. Have they really had great success developing an ace in that minor league system? Absolutely not. But they have had success developing major league hitters. You look at just on their roster right now, Wyatt Langford is one of their own homegrown guys. Evan Carter, one of their own guys. They traded for minor league prospects in Ezekiel Duran and Josh Smith. I guess you could call them pseudo their own guys because they acquired them while they were still prospects. You got Josh Young at third base. On behind the plate, they traded for Jonah Heim with Jurickson Profar a few years back. I say a few years, it's probably been like 5-6 years now. But you can see how they really developed the hitting side of things at the minor league level. Now, as far as pitching, who's the #1 in their rotation? Jacob deGrom, free agency. The #2, Eovaldi, free agency. John Gray, the #3, free agency. Tyler Mahle, free agency. Then you get to Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter. Those are their homegrown guys, but those guys haven't had great experience yet at the major league level to see if they're going to be an ace of this staff or even worthy of a #2 or 3 spot in that rotation. They look like they have all the hallmarks of being good pitchers at the major league level, especially Kumar Rocker right now. But you see how easy it is for major leaguers or for major league hitting to come up through the minor leaguers as opposed to pitching. It's far harder to get a guy like Paul Skeens to come up through your minor league ranks than it is to get a guy like Wyatt Langford. Doesn't mean those guys aren't valuable. It just means it's easier to develop hitting, because if you can manage that one thing, the one thing you've been working on since you were 5 years old, hitting off the tee with your dad in the driveway, you can continue to hone that craft all the way up to the major league level. Meanwhile, on the pitching side of things, you're just working on velocity, building up arm strength, making sure you don't hurt yourself when you're working your way up. Then you might learn some breaking balls a little bit early for your age, if we're all being honest. If you're developing as you kind of go along through high school baseball, travel team baseball, and then hopefully you get drafted early on in the draft and you go straight into a minor league system. Most of those guys ultimately flame out or turn into bullpen guys and may never even make it to the major league level. Hitters, however, have been working on that craft day in and day out for the entirety of their lives. Also, look at the positions on the diamond. How many pitchers are on the field at any given time? One. How many hitters are on the field at any given time? All the other position players on that field hit. And so that's how hitters are a lot easier to develop than pitching, because it's so much harder to get that development on a young age, because they really don't have that arm strength developed yet, and they're told not to throw breaking balls at that young age. You learn that as you get closer to your 17, 18-year-old self, and really learning how to throw those type of pitches before you hurt your arm long term. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. If you're looking to kind of jumpstart your minor league system, it's a bear of an operation to really develop minor league pitching. There's a few organizations that do it really, really well, and that's why they've been able to maintain their success. You look at the Tampa Bay Rays, who seem to have an endless pipeline of guys who aren't necessarily highly thought of in the draft or in free agency or international free agency, and that they somehow come up and give great performances at the big league level. Are any of them really household names? No, when they first come up, but they eventually turns into names like James Shields, David Price, Blake Snell, among many, many, many other starting pitchers. Matt Garza comes to mind, and several other starters that have come through that Rays organization over the last 10 to 20 years. So you can see how hitting is a lot easier to develop. Welcome in Holly, Brad, Yodel, Lucas, Player. Appreciate you guys joining us one time. Joining us again anyway. Happy New Year, Michael. Any Yankees news? Still pretty much the same. Nothing really new as of today. Mavs, well, remember, it's going to be a tough month for you, Lucas. Mavs are going to have a tough month. Just understand, as long as they're in the top 6 by the time they get to postseason, they'll be just fine. They're still, in my mind, a top 5 team to make it to the finals and win it. I would hope they bring in a guy like Herb Jones. That's the one guy I'm hoping for that goes to the Mavericks, but we'll see. Anthony, if Bregman signs with Boston, hypothetically, does that mean they would have to trade Devers? No, they're not going to trade Devers because they bring in Bregman. It would be more likely that they would look to move on from Cassis or Yoshida to make money work and to kind of make playing time really work across the infield. Now, if they do bring in Bregman, the surprise there is that Devers is going to stay over there at third base. That means you don't have to move Casas off to first base unless you're moving Bregman there. It sounds like the way Heyman was placing the story with the Red Sox is that he would place second base in front of Trevor Story. That's a lot of money to be paying to a guy that's going to be a bench guy for you, but they do need a big right-handed bat. I think Trevor Story, while he hasn't been great with the Boston Red Sox to say the least, that's a lot of money that they'd be putting on their bench. I think they're still hoping to get positive returns on that, and so I see a deal with Bregman going to Boston very unlikely now that Devers has basically said, I'm not moving off at third base. I think the 2 teams that he referenced as favorites now are the Detroit Tigers and Blue Jays, are a significantly better chance of him going to those teams. And then the dark horse, of course, being the Chicago Cubs. Let's catch up on a few of these comments here. Happy New Year, Happy New Year. Devers isn't going anywhere. I absolutely agree. Manzano, absolutely not. Devers moves to first base. Devers isn't going to move to first base. It sounds like they don't want to sour that relationship with the player, but I mean, you look at the Red Sox history over the last 5-6 years, they haven't really cared about souring relationships with their own players. I give you Xander Bogaerts. I give you Mookie Betts. I would say that right now they have a really good up-and-coming young team. I don't think they necessarily want to upset anybody on this current iteration of their roster. Is more of the reason why I don't think it will happen, rather than just their unwillingness to upset their own clubhouse. I think they're going to keep Devers at third. I think Casas starts the season now at your first base spot. I think Story is your shortstop, and they're still looking for a bench bat, a DH-type player to come in. I would expect a signing somewhere along the lines of J.D. Martinez, Justin Turner, somebody like that to help out that roster. Welcome in, Paulie. Appreciate you joining us. Mets out on Bregman. I would say no. Heyman said his thoughts on it were that the Mets were very likely to get Alonso. That he put the odds that Bregman goes there to the Mets anyway as very unlikely. Would have to take some major shift as far as their position on Pete Alonso, and I don't see that happening at all. Should the Giants sign Bregman to play second base, He did mention the Giants in that conversation as far as a team that's being aggressive this offseason, trying to improve that roster in any way that they possibly can. They did bring in Adames, 7 for 182, very comparable players on this free agent market. I just don't think that's going to happen at all. I think they're looking to do other things in free agency. Herb Jones is going to take a haul. He is one of only 3 players the Pels have made untouchable. Untouchable in years past. I haven't seen anything this year that makes me believe that he's completely untouchable, given the standings of where the Pelicans are. I think they're looking to move Ingram first. I think Zion would be their preference to trade second, and if they can get a haul for Herb Jones, I think they would do it. A haul for me would be probably a trade of Gafford, probably a first-round pick this year because the 2025 first is a little bit more valuable than the one later on. You probably would have to include Omax as well, but I could see a trade being made like that. You'd still have to fill the role behind Lively with another center. I would think they would go after a guy like Larry Nance or Valanciunas, who could be had on the cheap in a trade anyway for a couple of second-round picks, and then you kind of roll with the lineup there. As hard as it would be to see Gafford on another team, wings are better for you once you get to the postseason, but the Mavericks have one of the greatest center duos in the NBA right now. I'm not sure they would do that deal if it included Gafford. If it included Kleber, maybe they make that move. Callie, Steve, Roy, Mark, welcome in. Steve, if true, Devers is hurting the team as a whole. At best, he's a below-average defender at third base. Yes, but he's signed long-term. He's the best player on that roster currently. They've got some good young candidates coming. Marcelo Mayer, the minor leaguer shortstop anyway, coming up. They have Roman Anthony. Abreu had a great rookie season. They're an up-and-coming team. They have some good pitching arms on that major league roster, and then they've supplemented it anyway with Garrett Crochet via trade, Walker Buehler, and Patrick Sandoval. I think the trade possibility of Luis Castillo is firmly out the window at this point. Callie, Red Boris is pushing hard for the Yankees to sign Ha-Seong Kim. That could be a fit there, kind of a low-cost option for them at third base. That would make some sense. Anthony, can you drop the link for your Twitter, Michael, so I can send you a link to an article? Absolutely. If you guys want to follow us here at The Upside, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Got about 80 of you guys watching at the moment. We're at 26 likes according to my count. If you guys wouldn't mind helping us out, hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. But if you want to send us something, Twitter is at UpsideSN. I'll check that out here shortly anyway. Roy, that's coming from 161 River Avenue. I heard it on a reliable source like Passon. Let me see. What was your comment here, Roy? Devers moves to first base. I don't see what your other comment was there, Roy. My apologies. Mark, if Texas could re-sign Yates and add another late-inning arm and could stay healthy, I think Texas or New York for the AL crown. That's kind of my position as well, Mark. We're going to dig into this offseason as to where teams are at, where we likely see them finish with the rosters they've built up for right now. The Rangers really do need to add a late-inning reliever right now. The first guy that's their priority right now is Kirby Yates. Sounds like Chris Martin is their 8th-inning target. They have had interest in A.J. Minter as well. I would not be surprised if we see multiple additions to the back end of that bullpen, even more additions than what could possibly be carried on a major league roster, because they want competition for those spots in the bullpen. They are adamant about having options in that bullpen. It's been 2 years with Bruce Bochy at the helm, and 2 years that bullpen has been a work in progress, to say the least. They had some great success with Kirby Yates and Robertson last year, but that was not expected. That was supposed to be Jose Leclerc as the closer last year. Spores was injured for much of the year last year, and only gave them what they could. Really tried to tough it out, but we'll see what they do. Let's see here, try to catch up on some of these comments here. Anthony, Michael, do you think in order for the Miami Heat to get De'Aaron Fox, it might have to be through a 3-team trade where they trade Jimmy to a team like Golden State and they send draft picks? Maybe, but I think Sacramento isn't. I don't think a fit was really there for Miami and De'Aaron Fox. I think they're looking for more wing talent in return for Jimmy Butler. I just don't think they're looking to go that route in a Jimmy Butler trade. To Sacramento, Miami gets Kuminga and Fox. Now, if you include Kuminga there, that would be more interesting. But then, in my mind, the Heat would have to include some picks going out in return, as well as moving on from Jimmy Butler. Lucas, please link your socials in the description. Yes, yes, yes. That we will do as well. I've sent it out on my socials as well. All of the I linked this video anyway, and all of my socials out there. If you guys want to follow us at Upside Ascend on X and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network, you can find us there as well. You can also click on our YouTube channel and find our links there as well. Roy, referencing to Yankee fan asking about HSK. Okay, gotcha. All right, Mike, welcome in. Tanner Scott is seeking a 4-year, $80 million deal. That's a lot for a bullpen pitcher, but I don't see the Dodgers paying that much. I could see 16 per year for 64 total. I think that's more likely what he will sign. I don't think anybody views him as comparable to a Edwin Diaz type contract. There are still several relief pitchers out there on the market. Not just Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, but you also have Estevez and Hoffman. Hoffman looks like he's going to try to get a contract as a starting pitcher once again this offseason. We'll see where he ultimately signs. But there's, 6 to 8 free agents that have signed relief contracts so far. The Rangers have signed, 4 of those guys? There's plenty of relievers still out there on the market. There's 40-plus guys. And then you got the trade market. Ryan Helsley of the Cardinals. Ryan Presley of the Houston Astros. We saw a trade of Devin Williams already. And there's several more relievers that could be moved as well. But as far as the contract expectation, I do believe he's going to get a 4-year deal, probably in the $50 to $65 million range in total value. Lucas, how long do you think until we see another $700 million contract? I would say probably a few years. I don't think it happens next year. I think we're going to get well over 400 now. Every day that we keep going through this offseason, it kind of keeps rising as far as I'm seeing this money keeping going out. The way there's so much money in the game right now. You have all the local TV contract controversy as to where teams are going to be playing. The Rangers don't even have or haven't even announced where their games are going to be broadcast next year. Yet they're still willing to go out there and spend and get really close to the tax, but just underneath it and field a very competitive team in the American League West. Several have already dubbed them the winners of the 2025 AL West. I want to see what they get as far as a closer, but imagining they do bring in somebody, a good high leverage option, I could see them very well finishing as number 1 in the division. Houston is right there with them. Mariners need to make some additions to that offense. They will. Until they do, though, I can't put them in that same conversation. Just like the Rangers, for me, I can't put them as the division winner until they bring in a closer. But when could we set the next $700 million contract? To answer your question there, I would say sometime in the next 5 years. Tom, welcome in. Truth, Christopher, appreciate you joining us once again. If you guys are new here, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. We got about 35 likes on the video. Let's see if we can pump that number up a little bit. Does really help out our channel when you do that. And if you're new here, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. We're going to be live every single night for you guys, breaking down the latest from MLB's Hot Stove all off season long. And then once regular season starts, we're not stopping. We're going to keep on rolling, bringing you all the latest rumors, news, updates, keeping up with all of the different Twitter, news reporters that you want to keep track of, that you have no time to do so because you're working all day. We have you covered. And so make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and join us here at the Upside. All right, let's check out a few of these comments here and try to catch up here. Tom, do you see the Cardinals trading Helsley, and if so, to who? I do. I think it'd be foolhardy for them to take him into the season. I've covered this a few different times now, but just to kind of recap the reasons why I don't think it's a good option. One, injury risk. Right now, his name would be a very hot commodity on the trade market, like I expect it's being discussed behind the scenes that we haven't heard too many rumors about. Two, poor performance. Helsley has been subject to both of those issues, injury and poor performance in the past. He's coming off of a very strong year, 1 year left on his deal. If he gets hurt or struggles in the first month of the season and loses his closer job, you're not going to be able to trade him for anything at the deadline. Right now, you're trying to rebuild for 2026 and trying to return back to a competitive team 1 year down the road. By trading away those veterans off your roster, guys who aren't going to be there for the long term, like Nolan Arenado, like Ryan Helsley, you maximize your chance for success. And so that's why I'm expecting a trade. Now, as far as where, any one of these teams that misses out on one of the top-end release options, I said probably the fallback for the Rangers on Kirby Yates looks like it could be Ryan Helsley. I've seen several different trade ideas kind of pop out there from several reporters. I've heard a couple of different rumors as well about the Rangers kicking the tires and discussing things there as well. Remember, the Cardinals and Rangers have done business before via trade. Two of the Cardinals' top 10 prospects came in that Jordan Montgomery and Chris Stratton trade. That trade also propelled the Rangers to a World Series. Could say it worked out really well for both sides. I wonder if they revisit that well once again if they don't get their guy in Kirby Yates. Mark, Minter and Yates would be nice. That's kind of my thoughts there as well. But I'd rather have Martin in that eighth inning role and Minter as kind of another option to go there. I think Armstrong right now is signed as kind of a depth option for that bullpen. Ideally, you'd like some of those young guys to take his spot in that lineup or in that bullpen to start the year. But they're going to have to earn it, and that's the whole thing that the Rangers are trying to push right now with that bullpen is earning your spot at the major league level. They want a much better bullpen than what they've had, and they're really investing in it this offseason. Sure, they're not bringing in like three, A-plus relievers like a Kirby Yates for the ninth, a Tanner Scott for the eighth, a David Robertson for the eighth or for the seventh anyway, and then Kenley Jansen just to kind of finish things off. They haven't gone about it that way, but they're going about it by bringing in some really good guys as far as low-cost contracts, high strikeout numbers, ground ball pitchers to a couple of them, and just some guys that have a lot of major league experience, a lot of age to them, a lot of grit, and they had some young guys at the back end of that bullpen that really faltered, especially in the second half last year. Sure, the lineup did not produce last year. Injuries were a problem. That rotation was injured for most of the year, yet the rotation wasn't the biggest problem. It was the bullpen and that lineup ultimately betraying them time and time again. Middle relief specifically was a big problem. They had some really good production out of Robertson and Yates as their eighth and ninth inning guys, but they couldn't get the game there fast enough. They always ended up giving up early before they even get to the eighth inning, and that's why they finished below 80 wins. They're looking to get back above 90 this year. I think they should be able to get there if things break their way with injuries, and they're going to have some flexibility at the trade deadline to bring in whatever they don't bring in this offseason. So we'll see what they do. Truth, the Braves have done nothing. What a disappointment. Yes, but they're also stuck with a very limited budget right now. I keep hearing about Charlie Morton for around $10 million is looking like a guy who they could bring in to solve their number 5 spot in that rotation. They are searching for a corner outfield bat. They're also looking for some bullpen options. Mark Bowman for MLB.com, who covers the Braves as one of their beat reporters anyway, was stating that the Braves are really stuck with finances, that they're going to go cheap in the bullpen, and they'll try to split the money between a pitcher and an outfielder. We get some rumors today about Max Scherzer having his name tossed around with several teams today, one of which I find rather interesting. Remember, the Braves were in there for Nathan Eovaldi for around 3 years, $20 million. He ultimately getting 3 years, 25 from Texas. Maybe they go after a one-year guy in Max Scherzer. He fits kind of the mold of what they've had a lot of success with the last couple of years. Guys on older contracts that are working or that they can sign and just hope for the best on a 1 or 2 year short-term contract. I think Scherzer's going to get a 1 year deal, probably in the $15 to $20 million range. That's pretty close to the maximum of what the Braves have to spend this offseason. They could go out there and bring in a cheaper option on the free agent market for a corner outfield bat, and then, of course, for the bullpen. But Max Scherzer, I think, has enough left in the tank to give you, 20 solid starts next year? I think he's probably going to be injured for about 8 of the starts, reasonably next year. And that could be enough to get them through the regular season. And then you never know when you get to October what Scherzer really has left in the tank. But I think he's got enough baseball left in him that he'd be a great option in their number 5 spot. And remember, they're looking to use Grant Holmes as one of their rotation options this year as well. So they have the flexibility to afford, when Scherzer does go on the injury list, to flex one of those guys up from the minor league system to fill in there for him already. Do they have a lot of do they have a lot of depth as far as minor league starters that are ready to take the jump? No, which is why I do think they're going to go cheaper, kind of a long relief option to kind of help give them some spot starts when necessary. But I like where the Braves are at least where their thinking is, in bringing in a pitcher like a Max Scherzer, low cost as far as the total term of the contract being only 1 year, and then they save themselves some money for free agency next offseason. Charlie Morton is a guy that I think would be a little bit cheaper than Scherzer, but maybe their fallback option ultimately. Christopher, I'd love to see Helsley in Dodger Blue. Honestly, I think that one's also possible as well. Ryan Presley, I think, is probably the second option there. Tanner Scott being the primary one. But I say Helsley is probably the third option that the Dodgers are looking to bring in this offseason. Truth, but the Braves have a ton of talent coming off of the injured list. They do. They have Acuna coming back this year, but remember, Acuna has had difficulty staying healthy now for, the last 4 years. He has had season-ending injuries in 2 of those 4 years. They won a World Series in one of those years. They have some really good options at the Major League level. A lot of those guys are already locked up, but their finances are already committed, and they're going to have to figure out how to piece this one together on a shoestring budget, and I think they'll do so successfully. There's a report from Mark Stein that everyone except Herb Jones, Troy Murphy, and Misi are available for trade. I would agree with that. Those are the most valuable pieces on that team. But when you look at that roster, what are teams going to ask about? Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Misi. I don't think Murphy moves. I think that he's going to be a centerpiece of that roster going forward. I think Herb Jones on a lower cost contract is invaluable in today's game. They'd have to be bowled over for it. And Misi is a very nice player for them. I don't see them moving him. I don't think the team's going to offer up enough to make it worth them moving off of his contract. But if a team wanted to go out there and bring in a Herb Jones, I think they could be bowled over and trade him ultimately. Let's see here. Try to catch up on a few of these comments here. I know I've just missed a few of them there. Player, I wouldn't worry about the Yankees in the postseason. Stanton is their only threat. I wouldn't say only. I think their lineup is better, but you are correct about that though. As far as a postseason player, somebody who rises to the occasion. They had that in spades with Juan Soto. They're going to have to hope for some of those guys to finally turn it around. Most notably, Aaron Judge does great during the 162. He's got to show up in the postseason. I don't see any reason to believe that he's not going to do so in the future. You got to build your team as best as you possibly can, yes, for the 162, but the goal is to win the World Series. And while the Yankees have done a nice job rebuilding this roster and kind of making it a better overall team, with the loss of Juan Soto even included in that calculation, they still are not necessarily a better team in October, at least in my mind. They don't have that top playoff performer to come in and somebody that the whole team can look at and say, that's the guy we're going to ride to the World Series. They have Aaron Judge there, but he hasn't really proven it over the last couple of postseasons. And I think they're looking for that guy still to come in there and be that impact bat to kind of take some of the pressure off of the production Aaron Judge is going to have to produce. Time not if he walks and gets a hit. Cement shoes for Stanton to hit a home run. He's getting a little older, a little bit longer in the tooth. Christopher, welcome in. Welcome in. VPCZX, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. Terry, appreciate you joining us. Yankees need Donovan or Profar. I don't think they're going to get Donovan. I don't think he's moved off of that Cardinals roster. But Profar I would like for pretty much any team out there. I love his versatility, his ability to hit leadoff. One name that I keep hearing as well on the trade market is Luis Arraez. Padres are trying to work out an extension there. If they're unable to get it done, I would fully expect a trade of Luis Arraez somewhere. A team like the Yankees would make sense. However, they do have worries about where he would fit defensively. I think he'd be his best position probably is DH on a team's roster. But wherever you can horseshoe that guy in there, I think it's great for that lineup. For instance, if you went to my favorite team, the Texas Rangers, hit leadoff in front of Corey Seager, I think Corey Seager has another 20 RBIs over whoever is hitting in front of him besides Luis Arraez. That's how big of an impact Luis could really have. Just think about what that could mean for a team like the Houston Astros. You have Jose Altuve hitting in front of Yordan Alvarez. Imagine putting in Luis Arraez in front of him as well. That guy's going to mash, another 30 RBIs? 40 RBIs? Having those two in front of him. Two of the greatest contact hitters in the game, Altuve and Arraez. Now, I haven't heard the Astros in on Arraez at all. I'm just saying he's the type of player that could be a difference maker that nobody's really paying attention to. He's never going to get the pub that everybody else is because he doesn't give, the home run. He doesn't do that kind of a thing. He's not a playmaking defender in the infield as well. He's a bat-first player, a contact-first player who does draw some walks as well. So he's going to be a force wherever he does get traded to. I think Dylan Cease of the Padres also gets traded as well. Navarro, 50 days until spring training starts. I'm going again this year, back-to-back. Well, that's good. I wish I could have that luxury myself. I would love to go to spring training just to kind of, check out like how MLB Network does 30 clubs in 30 days or whatever it is. I'd love to do something like that and just take a couple of months off. But hopefully with the changes I'm making, I will be able to have some additional flexibility behind the scenes to where we could do something like that. I'm saying it's highly unlikely this year, but maybe in the not too distant future, in a couple of years or so, maybe I could do something like that, and I might see you out there, Christopher. That'd be awesome to be able to get to go do. Lucas, can the Rangers get rid of John Gray? There's no need for them to get rid of him. I get how Rangers fans are always impatient. They want to win. They want to win now. John Gray is probably one of the few stabilizing forces on that rotation right now. So unless they bring in Roki Sasaki, I don't expect them to move him. Now, if they're able to bring in Sasaki and they want to save some additional money and use that flexibility to bring in a bat at the deadline or another starting pitcher or just bring another high leverage reliever in, then they could move on from John Gray. But for right now, they're going to hold on to him because he is a proven starter in that rotation. Because if Molly gets injured again, DeGrom gets injured again, Eovaldi figures to miss some time at some point this year, but probably will give you about 5 months of the year, but he will miss about a month of time. You don't know what you're going to get out of Kumar Rocker and the rookie Leiter as well. Bradford is the other guy, but he missed several months of the season last year. Dunning, the Rangers don't really trust. That leaves you with John Gray as one of the few stalwarts in that rotation. And yes, even he missed some time last year as well. But I don't expect the Rangers to get rid of him. Now, as far as could they, I believe they could if they added to that rotation. But as it stands right now, I wouldn't expect it. Mike, the Dodgers need to trade some players. Hopefully we get a deal for Luis Robert to play center. I'd rather see Edman as the Dodgers shortstop and Mookie playing an all-star caliber second base. I wouldn't mind that alignment. I just don't think they're going to get a guy like Robert. I think they're looking at other options. One guy I've kind of been looking at this offseason is Dalton Rushing, a kind of a minor league prospect. I believe he's number 1 for the Dodgers, or close to it anyway. Came up as a catcher, but has played over 270 games in the outfield the last 2 years in the Dodgers minor league system. Why do you guys think that is? Well, he's blocked at catcher because Will Smith is there. He's not going to see playing time there regularly, so as a backup catcher, he'll probably get a few starts here and there. But by and large, they want his bat on the Major League roster next year, it sounds like. And it sounds like he's going to have every chance to win one of those corner outfield spots. I think Teoscar and Conforto ultimately platoon quite a bit. I think Dalton Rushing is going to have his fair chance to make this roster. And I think he could have a chance to win the NL Rookie of the Year if he hits the lay. I think he's going to be able to. Has a lot of power in that bat, and I think it's going to be one of the driving forces that none of us see coming for that Dodgers team. A team that has Mookie Betts, a team that has Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Snell, among several other superstars, and yet we're talking about a rookie that might be able to carry that offense for a period of time. I think he is that level of bat. That's a lot of pressure to put on a rookie, but there's so many other pieces that are going to take the pressure off of him early on in the season. Now, it's going to be important that he perform at the major league level. If he doesn't, of course, they'll move him back down or give him less playing time or whatever the case may be. But I think he's going to do very well in that situation. I'm expecting nothing but big things from Dalton Rushing this year in the Los Angeles Dodgers system. Tom, it's been kind of quiet on destinations for Anthony Santander. Who do you think is going to sign him? Okay, so this is kind of where we'll go on the mini rant, if you will, here. Santander, it's been announced that the 2 favorites for him right now are the Toronto Blue Jays and the Los Angeles Angels. We got news today from John Heyman that says Artie Moreno at the ownership level is really anxious to make a quote-unquote big splash this offseason. If you guys want to check out a rant that we had on Monday, I really encourage you guys to catch quite a bit of our live that we did. But my goodness, this is the Angels just doing what the Angels continue to do. I really trust John Heyman and his reporting on this one because he has been very accurate with the information coming from Artie Moreno's camp. Seems like he's got someone plugged into Artie Moreno's thinking in that organization. He's been very accurate over the years. You look at how this roster originally came together. Look even back to when they brought in Shohei Ohtani. At the time, he and Trout are thought of as probably one of the 2 or 3 of the top 5 players in the entire game, maybe even better than that, and they still couldn't sniff the postseason. So they add a bat. They add another bat. They bring in 1-year stopgap option as a starting pitcher in Syndergaard. They bring in another guy in Dylan Bundy, among several other guys. Do any of these options propel them to make a postseason bid, win the division, win the World Series? No, 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 and no. So I get how the Angels are looking to improve their roster, but at a certain point you have to realize when your chance to win is and when it is not. My problem with this whole thing is that they're short-circuiting their rebuild once again, and I don't see them getting to the postseason. Are you saying Anthony Santander and your current mix of players is better than when you had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in their prime as 2 of the 5 best players in the entire game, and now you're going to make the postseason when that team couldn't? That's just complete boneheaded decision-making from the Los Angeles Angels. I get it. Moreno, you wanted to put your team back in the headlines. The Dodgers have stolen all your thunder. Your market cap has gone to next to nil in that market. I get it. Shanuel hasn't developed as fast as you had hoped. Your prospects aren't exactly as good as you had hoped because you traded them all away during Ohtani's tenure there. Your farm system's starting to get a little bit better, but you're very early on in this rebuilding process, and now you're going to push your chips to the center, bring in Kikuchi for 20 plus a year. Now you're going to push your chips to the center and bring in Santander and more offense to that lineup that is, let's just say Mike Trout is less than reliable as far as his availability. You no longer have Shohei Ohtani to really carry that offense anymore either. I get it. It's going to be a down year offensively compared to what Ohtani really did for you. I get it. You want your team to be better. But again, you're short-circuiting your success, or at least future success, and there's no way I can see this team even sniffing the postseason with their roster they currently have on there. John Heyman mentions that they have interest in Pete Alonso as well. If they don't bring in Santander, he doesn't see Alonso as a big of a fit as Santander because they'd have to move Shanuel at first base out to left field. A possibility, but for me, this just smacks all of what the Angels have done over the last, 10 years? And I feel sorry for you Angels fans because it doesn't look like your nightmare of not making it to the postseason for 10 plus years now is going to end any time soon. But to answer your question there, Tom, who are the favorites there for Santander? It looks like the Toronto Blue Jays, because of all the money that they have to spend, and the Angels are the favorites. Houston, if they move off of Presley, is expected to be one of the contenders there for him. If not, then they'll probably go with a little bit lower cost option, maybe a Jerks and Profar there. I've heard the Cubs in connection with them as well over the last couple of days. I don't necessarily buy that one quite as much because I think their outfield is basically set. I think it's just more about them trying to add a bat more than anything else to that lineup. Whether it be Santander or Bregman or whoever the bat is that they bring in, they need some more offense in that lineup, and that would be one great way to do so. Christopher, since Kenley Jansen left LA, I decreased my heart meds. I mean, Jansen did get a little rocky towards the end of his tenure there with the Dodgers, but he had a great career with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's still got a little bit left in the tank, and a team that misses on Yates and Scott and Estevez and all these other relief options on the trade market that are closer eligible or have closer experience. Kenley's going to do very well in free agency. I would expect him to get probably an $8 or $9 million a year deal, maybe for 2 years, for a team that needs a closer. I'm not necessarily expecting that out of Texas because I think they're going to get somebody a little bit better than that, but he still has a little bit to offer on the major league level. We'll see where he goes. If you guys are new here, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. We just crossed the 100 viewer threshold. If you guys wouldn't mind helping us out, smash that like button. About half of you guys have done so. If you wouldn't mind the other half hitting that like button, goes a long way to helping us out here at the Upside. We've gained almost 500 subscribers through the winter meetings through today. Really enjoyed all the success we've had, and thank you guys for supporting our channel. Goes a long way when you guys hit that like and subscribe. So I just want to thank you guys for doing so. If you guys want to follow us over on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook at Upside Sports Network as well. Anytime we go live, we'll post there as well to let you guys know when we do go live. Every single night, we're going to bring you off-season coverage. The entire MLB Hot Stove season, we'll have you covered. All the latest rumors, all the latest headlines, predictions as to where players are going to go, how it's going to impact your lineup, your rotation, your bullpen, what the next steps are for your team, what does your future look like down the road because of this move, where are the free agents next year ultimately looking to go, what their market is going to look like, and what the roster this year is going to look like. For instance, the Toronto Blue Jays have 2 guys that are going to be hitting free agency next year unless they sign extensions, and they haven't really added anybody this offseason. There's nothing to say that this team is going to have a bright future unless they are able to get an extension done with Guerrero and Bichette, or Bichette anyway. I don't think they get either one of those guys. I think both of those guys ultimately leave unless they get a massive, massive bag from the Blue Jays. I think it's going to be on the table, absolutely, but they're a team that also has a decreased prospect pool from which to use in trade. They've spent a lot of money on older guys that are going to be coming off their books in the next year or two, but there's nothing really long-term that they've got on their books aside from Chris Jimenez and Jose Barrios. Doesn't exactly inspire a lot of confidence if you're a Blue Jays fan. They're going to be going through a tough rebuild process. Unless they bring in a guy like Bregman, I think he could be one guy that could short-circuit that thing and maybe convince Vlad Guerrero Jr. to get it done. The only way I think he goes to Toronto, though, is if just the money isn't there from the other clubs that are interested in bringing him in. I think Bregman is looking to beat the 7 for 182 definitely from Willie Adames. I think he's looking to break $200 million with a contract as well, so we'll see where he signs. Christopher, welcome in. Mark, I think Teodo, not sure how to spell his name right, is a minor league guy that could be good for Texas. Not sure he's ready for 2025, though. I'd agree there. He had a really great year this year. There's been some speculation that the Rangers could call him up as a bullpen option in the second half of this year. His fastball would really play up in that type of a role. I think the Rangers are going to try to keep developing him as a starting pitcher, though, for the time being, because they really have struggled developing starting pitching. And if you can get some of those starting pitchers to develop, maybe you can go out there in a trade and make a big-time move out there for whatever hole you have on your major league roster, because you have that talent coming from the minor leagues. T. Dolan, let's see here, Jays for Santander. I think the Santander would be a better fit with the Jays than the Angels. Honestly, that'd be one way to kind of showcase to Bregman we're trying to build for the future. We'll overspend on Santander with the thought process you would come here by having another player of which to really contend with in the AL East. Somebody you could point to and say, hey, that guy's at least going to be on my team for the next year or two. Whereas Vlad Guerrero Jr. might not even be on your team for the whole season. So we'll see what they do. Jordan, welcome in. Sorry you missed your New Year's Eve stream. That's all right, my friend. They're all still out there. If you guys want to check out those streams, all of our streams are cataloged on our site. Make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe, and you'll be free to join us here at the Upside. Callie, A's, Marlins, and Rays have to spend money soon, or the grievance suit kicks in. Teams are waiting for those teams to bite on a deal. Honestly, I could see that happening as well. I think there is some thought process there that the Marlins, Rays, and A's are going to have to take on some salary. And so teams like the Yankees, who have Stroman that they're looking to unload, Cardinals, who are looking to offload the contract of Nolan Arenado without having to eat too much of it. Other clubs like the Arizona Diamondbacks are very open to moving on from Jordan Montgomery. They've made no secret about their dislike of having him on that roster and how poorly that move ultimately worked out. They're looking to save some money so they can add to that bullpen. John Heyman also stated that Alex Bregman could be a fit for the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm not buying that one at all. His reasoning there was that they've been willing to spend this offseason, so who knows if they have the money, but maybe they'll surprise us again. That's not a reason. There's no hope. There's no opening in that roster right now for him to really slide in there. I like the makeup of that team with the Arizona Diamondbacks. They do have some free agents pending on that pitching staff, but I think they'll be able to retain one of those guys, if not both, through free agency next year. Let's see here. Mike, welcome in, Mike McCain. Appreciate you joining us. Trying to catch up through all your comments here, so I apologize if I'm a little slow at this. If you guys want to make sure I catch your comment, if you want to send it via Super Chat, I'd greatly appreciate that. Let's see here. I'm going to go backwards a little bit on Devers. He shouldn't have that kind of leverage to where he should be telling the Red Sox anything. He should move to first, terrible at third. I get the point there of what you're making. Because his deficiencies at third base, he, as a better man, should understand it and be willing to move off of that position to first base. I get your point there. But he signed the deal, and he's the best player on that roster. How you treat your best player on that roster with a very young team around him is going to give a big clue to the young players on that roster how the team is going to treat them in that same situation. So you have a good young team now. You don't really want to rock the boat as a front office. And while it might make you a better team overall, you want to make sure your star player is on board with it. So if I'm the front office there, the first thing I'm looking to do is try to bring in Alex Bregman however I possibly can. And yes, the next thing I try to do is I sit down with Rafi Devers and convince him why moving over to first base would be the best thing for him. Ultimately, though, I don't think they bring him in. Mike Hardwick, appreciate you joining us. For Texas, it would be great if Rocker could make the jump and be a 2 or at worst 3 by the end of 25. I think he can stay healthy and will dominate in the years to come for Texas. Honestly, I'm very high on my hopes for him as well. I think he's going to be dynamic for Texas. Texas really hasn't had a pitcher like him that has been homegrown in decades. I'm talking decades. That's how long it's really been. But I do think at this point right now, counting on him for anything more than a number 5 starter would be foolhardy to enter the season, which is why DeGrom is still your one taking health out of the equation. This is how your rotation stacks up. DeGrom, Eovaldi, Gray, Molly, Kumar Rocker, and Jack Leiter. Bradford waiting in the wings along with Dunning, and if they bring in Jose Urena, maybe that would be the number 9 guy. That's a lot of starting pitching. Chris Young will always add more and more starting pitching however he possibly can. And oh, by the way, Rangers are still in there for Roki Sasaki as well. Tom, do you see a trade for Yandy Diaz as a possibility? And if so, where? Absolutely. Rays are trying to figure out ways to shake up that roster. Lowe comes to mind. Diaz comes to mind. Fairbanks as well. But remember, they're also going to have some revenue sharing complaints from the PA if they trade away too much salary. So I do see them looking to make a smart baseball move of Yandy Diaz. Say a team like the Seattle Mariners looking to upgrade their offense, and so they bring in a Yandy Diaz. I would expect a team like the Rays to bring in a contract back to kind of help or to keep their salaries up a little bit higher to avoid a grievance coming from the Major League Players Association. But then the prospect return would also have to be higher as well because they're taking on the contract. I think they're going to try to have their cake and eat it too by recouping prospects in return for Diaz and prospects for taking on a poor contract from another team. That's just one team out there. There are several that could use a player like Yandy Diaz out there, especially on only a 1-year deal. But Lowe as well and Fairbanks are names that I would keep an eye on out there as well. Tom, does Minnesota move Pablo Lopez in the expected fire sale? And if so, who's in play? For me right now, I think they're going to try to figure out their finances first and foremost. I think that begins with Carlos Correa. I think if they eat, say, 20% of the deal that's left, 30% of the deal, they could really get a decent package back for him. The Mets are one team that I would expect to have interest if they did something to that degree as far as how much they would eat up off of that contract. They had interest in Correa. By mitigating the risk for what the Mets were going to be willing to spend on him, maybe they could get a decent haul in return. By a decent haul, I'm saying maybe a top 20 prospect, maybe a couple of top 30s, but that's about it. As far as the big piece there is Pablo Lopez. I think he could be moved at the deadline along with Sandy Alcantara. Those would be two big-time starting pitchers that could make a huge difference in the race for a pennant, and I would expect the Minnesota Twins to look to do that at the deadline because they're probably going to be fourth in that division behind clearly the better teams in the Guardians, the Tigers, and the Royals. That's hard to say as a Twins fan, but it's just where things are for them. Jordan, if you could rank the top 4 leagues, what would your order be? Like MLB, NHL? Top league in America, I guess, from money and fan interest would probably be the NFL. Number 2 would probably be baseball, as much as people don't want to admit it, and as much as they national TV games don't necessarily draw. Local TV games certainly do draw significant numbers, not necessarily as big as they once did, but the local networks or the local numbers are better than what the national broadcasts usually end up pulling. And baseball is still very popular. There's a reason why it's America's pastime. Basketball is still very good, but it's very much neck and neck. And then of course the NHL would be 4th place there. I think all the other leagues fall into that 5th category. One week it might be NASCAR, another week it'll be the WNBA, another week it'll be the PGA Tour, another week it'll be tennis, another week it'll be the Olympics, another week it'll be the Tour de France, whatever the case may be, the flavor of the day. But in America, it's pretty much the NFL followed by the MLB and NBA. Kind of flip flop them around however you think, and then the NHL 4th. My favorite sport, NHL 1, basketball and baseball tied for 2nd, and then football a distant 4th for me. Let's see here. Mike Lopez with the D-backs getting Burns have put themselves back as National League contenders. It may affect the Padres season. If San Diego don't make the playoffs, they may have to blow up their whole team. They're not going to have to blow up their whole team. Their roster's pretty much set with the exception of 3 pieces. Michael King, Luis Ariz, and Dylan Cease. 2 of which I'm expecting them to trade before we even get to the season. So they're not going to try to blow this team up as far as that's concerned. Now, as far as them being a contender, I think they are a very serious contender. I still think the Dodgers are the favorite. I think the Padres and Diamondbacks, I view them very similarly. I think both of them have just as much chance to make it as a wild card as the other. Depending on what the return could be for Dylan Cease or for Luis Ariz will really impact how their team goes forward this season. For instance, if they bring in a major league hitter in return for Dylan Cease and they bring in a pitcher in return for Luis Ariz, I think they'd be right back to where they were before the trade and still be able to recoup some value from the deals by moving off of Cease and Ariz. But we'll see there. Player time. Judge hasn't done anything in the 7 postseasons. Torres has better numbers than him. Torres is a guy that did rise to the occasion. Judge, I think, will at some point. I know how Yankees fans get impatient after a while. I think the MLB after a while does get impatient with guys failing to perform. But remember, the playoffs are what? A 2 or 3 game series to begin with, a 5 game series, and then eventually you get to 7. How many games are there in a 162 game season? Oh, that's 162. Okay. I'm just saying it's much easier to perform because your numbers on average are higher because during the regular season, a 5 game hitless streak doesn't impact you because you have 157 more to get back on track. Whereas in the playoffs, if you have a 5 game hitless streak, you might be bounced out of the playoffs in 1 round or the 2nd round if that's how your team ultimately advances. So playoffs, you have to rise to the occasion. You have to be able to perform and be able to do so and recover from very adverse situations, playing on the road, all those kinds of things. And I think Judge has the fortitude to be able to get it done eventually. We just got to see him actually do it, though, which is one reason why I still have my questions about the Yankees being better overall than than the team they just had in 24. I think the top end talent really rose to the top in the postseason. Part of the reason why they made it all the way to the World Series. I think with that gone now with Juan Soto, they're going to have to prove it all over again that their philosophy of having a better team then just having that centerpiece in Juan Soto is ultimately going to carry them over the top and win a World Series. But we shall see. Cowboys Nation, welcome in, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us once again. We've got so many mics in our chat right now. I think there's like 7 of you guys. If you guys want to say hello, let us know where you're watching from. Got quite a few likes on our video right now. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe. We crossed our goal by the end of the year. We were hoping to reach 2,100 subscribers, and we got there. We gained almost 500 subscribers in just the last 3.5 weeks alone through the winter meetings till now. Absolutely great the turnout you guys have shown up for us here at the Upside. All the super chats and support you guys have given us. I just want to say thank you one more time for all of that success you guys have brought us. And we're still growing. Every night we're going to bring you the latest updates from the entire MLB Hot Stove. So make sure you turn on your notifications and hit that subscribe button. Let's see here. Mike, Dalton Rushing will play left field, not center. That is why I believe they need a trade. Plus, they have too many good players. They don't have an option to send back to the minors. They will. They'll shake out their roster. As far as the roster crunch things go. You never know as far as injury as well. They're going to bring in Clayton Kershaw. He'll immediately go on the injured list. But I do get your point as far as a center fielder. I just think Dalton Rushing is going to be a big impact to that roster. They might not need to do anything major like a Luis Robert trade that you were referencing earlier to keep things afloat there in center field. I think they could go a little bit cheaper. Maybe a guy like Leody Taveras, who's not necessarily a great offensive option. I get it. But defensively, I think he'd be everything you could hope for out there in center. There's other options that they could go for in free agency as well. But I don't think center field is a huge priority for them at this point. I think they're primarily looking bullpen, and more bullpen. Mr. Gravitt, who do you think the Giants will trade for? Will trade for? I don't think they'll trade for anybody at the moment. There are conversations about them being involved in this, that, and the other thing. I think there's also conversations about them possibly moving on from Doval in their bullpen. Could they make a move before spring training or during the spring training season? Absolutely. But for me, I think they need to continue to try to build this team up and not try to trade away some minor league pieces on this roster while they're continuing to try to improve it overall. They're not going to compete for a World Series. They're not going to compete for the division. Even if they made an impact trade out there, I'm not sure it even gets them a wild card, which is why in free agency, if they continue to build up this offseason and then really go hardcore after it next offseason for the Giants, with them going after guys like Vlad Guerrero Jr., Kyle Tucker, Bo Bichette, Framber Valdez is going to be a free agent, Dylan Cease. That's when I would try to really strike it hot, along with the Washington Nationals are going to be in there next offseason, spending at big-time levels. But that's what I would do if I were in the Giants front office. I'd recognize that this isn't my year, but this is definitely a year for growth and a year to move on from Farhan Zaidi and kind of change the narrative around that organization. I think they've done so with the Willie Adames signing, 7 for $182. They go out there and get their guy, and they continue to build around him. I think getting a one-year guy at first base is probably what they ultimately should do. Remains to be seen if they get Pete Alonso or if they step out there for an Anthony Santander or an Alex Bregman. But I think the most likely out of all those names probably would be Pete Alonso more than anybody else. But I still think he goes back to the Mets. Mike Lopez, the Angels are trying to acquire a Korean infielder that just got posted from the KBO. I think that'd be a good get for them. Remember, they have Rendon over there at third base. That didn't work out from jump. He's been terrible. I think he'd be an upgrade over what they've had over there at third base. And it sounds like they're going to basically move on from Rendon, however they ultimately have to do so. Ducks. All right. Navarro, San Francisco Giants was just rated 30th out of 30 teams as far as prospects rating. Not much to trade for besides Webb or Doval. It's kind of what we were just talking about, Doval being available. They're not going to trade Webb. They're trying to build through free agency this offseason, continue to build through the minor leagues and not trade away pieces, which is why I don't think they'll move on from some of those guys. Mark, I think it's to be said funny that Wyatt Langford has a 2 or 3 month streak like he ended the season. Pitcher can't pitch to Corey, can't pitch to Langford. Now they're facing Young, Peterson. Okay, so basically you're just saying the Rangers lineup is deep, and I would agree with you there. I think Seager's going to have a little bit of a bounce back. Semien, usually has one bad year, one good year. We're up for another good year from Semien here. Langford didn't really show his power until the third month of the season last year. He's shown power all the levels of the minor league system, all through the college days, through his minor league, through all his entire baseball life. It was not going to last forever. I think now that he's gotten a full year under his belt, we're going to see him absolutely take off next year and be a very successful player. I think Peterson's really going to help the offense for Texas. I have questions about his limitations as far as a lineup construction standpoint. but I do think it'll make the bats work a lot better. Texas really focused on power this offseason. They had 230 home runs as a team last, or the year they won the World Series. They had 170-ish, 174 last year. So they go out there and bring in Higashioka, known most for his power, not his contact rates. They bring in Jake Berger, again more power than contact rates, and they bring in Jock Peterson, who also has great power in that bat. Not exactly known as a speedy runner either, but he's just known as a professional hitter. I think he's going to do great offensively for Texas. But again, I have my worries as far as how his fit is on the field, DH-wise, how they're going to utilize him, and what they're going to do with the roster overall, because they're going to have a full-time DH now on that roster that they're going to have to platoon at some point, it sounds like. Alrighty, let's see if we can catch up a little bit here. VPCZX. Should I bring a World Series to Miami, or should I bring one to the Angels of Anaheim on the Show 24 franchise mode? Do it for Miami. We got a few Miami fans in our chat. That'd be good for them. Cowboys Nation, tell me if I'm right. If I said my O's signed Flaherty, we should definitely still trade for Luis if the cost isn't too significant. We'd add 2 solid number 2s. In my opinion, that'd be a legitimate rotation while not having to give up too much, I guess is your point there. To rush Bradish back. Okay. I'm really hoping they don't bring back Flaherty. It didn't work out. That's the one park he has really struggled in. He had a great season in the first half of the year. Kind of had his ups and downs, especially in the postseason with the Dodgers. But he is probably the best free agent that the O's can probably get right now. I think they should be looking in the trade market. Castillo would be the guy I would be going after first and foremost. But if I'm the Orioles, I really would be looking for something other than Flaherty on the free agent market. I'd be looking in any other direction. For instance, we mentioned Max Scherzer as an option for the Atlanta Braves as a one-year guy on a $20-ish million deal, maybe $18 million, $15 million. I think the O's should be right there as well. I don't think he'd be great as far as giving up the home run ball, but when he's not giving up the home run, he's going to give you high-quality innings. When you know he doesn't have it, though, you're going to have to yank him out pretty quick, because when he starts giving up those home runs, they come in bunches. So you're going to have somebody get up really quick in that bullpen, and once he gives up that first homer, have that guy up and ready within a batter, and then get Scherzer out of there if he's starting to give up that gopher ball. But for me, I would rather have 1 year of Scherzer than a 3 to 5 year contract with Flaherty and still go after a number 1 option via trade. But I get the point as far as not trying to rush Bradish back. I don't think he makes a good addition to that rotation, but he's not a number 1 in that rotation either. Navarro, the curse of Artie Moreno's team is his team's tanked when he changed his name to the LA Angels. Sorry, Anaheim Angels of Orange County. I've always had a soft spot for the way the Angels continue to go out there and spend. And as a young fan, you don't really understand the finances of baseball, but you just see, oh, they got Albert Pujols, they got Josh Hamilton, they got C.J. Wilson. Why is this team not winning World Series after World Series? Because they didn't do enough to develop from within. They got really lucky with Mike Trout, but other than that, where's the success really come from? Joe Adele was supposed to be the next great thing in the outfield. Where is he at now? Anthony Rendon, the bat they bring in, was supposed to really turn this franchise around offensively and get them to the postseason with a core that included Ohtani and Trout. Did they get there? No. But as far as Artie Moreno goes, the news today from John Heyman is that he wants to make a big splash. I really hope they don't do it. But honestly, I'm beginning to lean more and more to the likelihood that it's going to happen, and it's going to set that franchise back. I'm a Rangers fan. I make no qualms about that. I don't try to hide it. But as a baseball fan, I like seeing other teams go out there and make smart moves. I don't like teams going out there and make dumb decisions. For instance, the Colorado Rockies, they trade away, or they give the big-time contract to Nolan Arenado and say, oh yeah, we can build around you. Nolan looks around a year later and is like, what do you mean? You haven't spent a dime. Well, what do you mean? We gave you all our money. You're the reason. Make us win. Go out there and prove it. Nolan says, no thanks, you told me you were going to try to continue to add even after giving the money. So then they figure out a trade with the St. Louis Cardinals. They retain several $1 million in that deal as well. They take that savings and immediately give it to Chris Bryant. So again, doubling down on dumb baseball decisions. Teams like the Miami Marlins, who give that $300+ million contract to Giancarlo Stanton, they were never going to be able to afford it. They have to eat several millions of dollars of that contract to get him to go to one of the best teams in Major League Baseball in the New York Yankees. And it just doesn't make sense for these teams to continue to operate in ways that make poor baseball decisions year after year. I get how an ownership group might really want to contend every single year, but that's the job of Perry Manassian, to speak truth to power, to tell the ownership there and say, hey, I get it. You want to win. You want to make a big splash. You're tired of being dominated by the Dodgers in the headlines. You're tired of being made a laughingstock in a very competitive market in LA. You never want to be the last place team in LA. You're never going to draw. You're going to lose money. But yeah, that's the point. You lose money in order to make money later. You invest in your team. You spend on prospects. You spend on pitching and development and getting that minor league system back to where it should be. You sign low-level free agents. That way you're not spending at the major league level. One way to save money. And then you trade those guys at the deadline to maximize your return at the deadline. And then the guys that do come up after the deadline that kind of gets their teeth or their teeth wet or cut their teeth anyway at the major league level, those guys that have success stay at the major league level. The ones that don't go back down to AAA, get a little bit more seasoning, winter ball, Arizona Fall League, and really try to take that next step the following year. And you continue to build and build and build. That process goes for about 3 to 5 years, depending on where you are at when you enter that part of your rebuilding process. You look at where they were at when they lost Shohei Ohtani to the Los Angeles Dodgers. They had just traded away several top prospects at the deadline for one-year rentals. They left as well in free agency. That farm system is not great right now. It's improved a little bit, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be able to be a competitive team going forward. So spending big bucks on a starting pitcher in Kikuchi doesn't make a lot of sense. Spending big bucks on Santander or Alonso doesn't make sense. And so that's what I'm saying here with Perry Manassian. You got to speak truth to power and let Artie Moreno realize this ain't the time to do it, bro. I get it. You want to win. You want to stop being made fun of with all your buddies as you go around palling around for dinner and being made fun of about how the Dodgers are so much better with your former player than what you have now. I get it. It hurts every time you go out there. Maybe find a different group of friends if that's your big problem. But the long-term solution is not signing Anthony Santander. The long-term solution to this problem is not bringing in Pete Alonso. The long-term solution is developing your team, getting young prospects to develop and produce at the major league level, and let them kind of grow as a team, and then spend the money in free agency. Look at what the Washington Nationals have done. They recognized their window was closing, so they said, "Hey, Juan Soto, you want to sign this deal? We'll sign you for what was the contract? 12 years at $425 million. I can't remember what the number was specifically, but it was a great number like that. That would have been a great contract at the time as far as total value. But he knew his value. He knew he was already signing a below market value contract for what his average annual value would have been over the lifetime of that deal. He knew he was worth more, and he was right. He made over $300 million more by turning down that offer from the Nationals. The smart thing the Nationals did, though, is recognize we can't afford this deal because we don't have enough prospects in our system. Let's go ahead and trade him away, bring in the prospects they can, and they got a huge haul from the Padres to do so. They traded away Turner. They traded away Scherzer. They made some really good investments as far as their prospects. Those prospects were able to develop in the minor leagues and start to cut their teeth at major league level. Some of those have worked out. Some of them haven't. But now they're going to have one last year before they really go after top flight free agents once again. They've done it the right way. The Angels have not. All right, Cowboys. Pitchers are always in demand, so both can be traded for pieces in a couple of years if necessary. True, but hitters are easier to develop in the minor leagues. Pitchers, if you can get them, you're usually not going to trade them if you have a really good one on your hands, and you're just going to try to keep those guys around and just make the offense work as best they can around it. Nando, welcome in. If the Dodgers miss out on Scott and Roki, then they should just bring back Flaherty. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think they're going to look to bring in Clayton Kershaw. I think they'll look to bring in some other free agent starting pitchers. Maybe not Flaherty, though. I think Flaherty's going to get a pretty good number from a team like the Blue Jays or a team that misses out on their target in free agency. And we could see him possibly even go to the Atlanta Braves. I think he'd be a little bit cheaper as far as an average annual value contract than what Max Scherzer is going to do. I think Flaherty probably gets, $17 million a year over 3 years. I think Scherzer gets 1 over 20. But if you want a long-term answer as your number 5 starter there, could be a possibility as well. What is yours? Trying to see what your comment is there. I don't see it there. All right. Hopefully I don't miss too many of these comments here. My apologies if I miss an important one. If you guys want to resubmit it here. Big Padres fan, why do you think they're not doing anything? I think they're looking at trades right now, Michael. I think they're looking at making some moves with Cease and Arise, trying to get an extension done with Arise from what I hear today. It doesn't seem like they're going to be successful, though, and so I'd expect them to make some trades. Tom, does Dylan Cease get traded, and if so, where? I think he will get traded. My guess right now is to Baltimore. I think that's the team that has the most interest in him at the moment. Mike Long, hi from the mountains in Greer, Arizona. Is JD Martinez still available? A viable option for Diamondbacks as DH, or has he declined a bit? His decline has started, yes, absolutely. He's still got a little bit left in the tank, I'll put it that way. As far as a viable option for the Diamondbacks, possibly. I think they could go a little bit cheaper at that spot, though, because I think they're trying to bring in bullpen as far as a priority, a high leverage guy more than anything else right now. Kirby Yates has been connected to them. I'm not sure how realistic it is for them to get that deal done, but they are looking bullpen primarily first. Roy, you know, Shade Seager carried Rangers, former Dodger. Now you have Peterson. We used to have Seawald. We will throw more Rangers' way. Well, I mean, I'd love to have more Dodgers. I mean, the Rangers have done a nice job taking some of the Dodgers off, the castaways like Josh Spores and players like that, and turning them into something. They had Chris Woodward as a manager there as well for a period of time. Don't forget Murakami for next offseason. Absolutely. He's going to be fantastic when he comes over. I would expect the Dodgers to be listed as a favorite for him as well, but I'm kind of wondering if he goes to one of the New York teams. I think he's kind of profiles as one of those guys. Cowboys, no, I'm no Rangers fan, Roy. I hate all markets that buy champions, but because they don't know how to develop. Equal hater. Well, I mean, the Rangers develop their hitting. The one thing they haven't been able to develop is pitching, and I get how you could say that, though, there, Cowboys Nation. The Rangers really struggled to develop pitching. That's why they had to go out there and buy it, and they just weren't going to wait around. The impetus from ownership the year they won the World Series was to get back to the playoffs, and Chris Young pulled out all the stops to get it done. And I think he kind of overshot what the ownership was hoping to do. Of course, you hope to win the World Series every year as a team. You try to build to do that one goal. But realistic goals, as far as winning and going to the playoffs, was the original goal that offseason for the Texas Rangers. And boy, oh boy, did they accomplish that one. Let's see here. Michael, as a sports fan in general, do you think the weighted lottery like you see in the MLB, NBA, NHL could work and the NFL to force teams to compete instead of tanking? I would like to see a somewhat of a lottery system. A weighted one does make some sense. But in general, the draft has worked for the NFL. There's nothing that you need to really tinker with it. Maybe if you just want to increase the intrigue around it, maybe that would be something to keep an eye on. But for me, I think that one draft that's gotten it right so far is the NFL. They get a lot of eyeballs on it, and it really works out as far as keeping parity in the league. You don't really see a lot of teams year after year after year drafting number one, number one, number one. Major League Baseball had that problem for a couple of years with some teams. That's why they now have a weighted lottery system. The NBA does have a draft lottery because they would have year after year, low payroll teams in that spot there because they lose the top end talent to those bigger teams and not have a way to get better. The NHL, I don't necessarily think they needed to have a lottery system, but there were teams that were tanking towards the end of it that they wanted to solve, and so that's why they instituted the lottery. Tom, do you think Robbie Ray makes a significant recovery from Tommy John in 25? Actually, I do. I think he's going to be a very solid starter this year. For the Giants, we'll see how much he has in the tank, but I think he's got enough there to really surprise some people. Jose, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. If you guys are new here, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Really would appreciate the support. We've gained quite a few subscribers since the winter meetings, so make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe and join us here at the Upside. Gained over 500 of you guys in just over 3.5 weeks. Really would like to see that number continue to grow as we start 2025 strong. Let's see how high we can get by the end of 2025. I have a number in mind, and I'm really hoping we get there because that would mean our channel, our community has really grown to the point where we can probably have some content with actual news sources as well. That I would love to see as well. Would love to be able to bring in some more technical people as well. I've got a couple of guys I've been talking to as far as ways to improve this channel, make it better for you guys as far as a viewing experience. Possibly having a co-host with me at times as well. And you guys joining us here at the Upside, you guys liking the video, you guys hitting that subscribe button, following us on X and on Facebook at Upside Sports Network. You guys make all of this possible. And the better we do, the more you guys like the channel, the more you guys subscribe, the better we can do, the more content we can bring you, the better ways we can do so. And if you guys want to support the channel, of course, I'd love to see that as well. But just your support of just liking and subscribing goes a long way. And I just want to make sure to thank all of you guys for doing so this year. It's been a great 2024. time to kick off 2025 with a bit of a bang. And you guys have made so far a great day today, and we'll see how we close out the day here strong. But I apologize if I missed your comment. Got to get going here in a bit. Got to open to close day again tomorrow. But I'm going to try to go through some of these comments quickly, catch a few of these. If I miss your comment, I do apologize. If you want to resubmit it now, I would mention it. Let's see here. VPCZX. Bet Upside Sport Network. I do franchise modes differently than others. I make a Google document, record trades, etc., and make it realistic with breaking news and sources. I do that kind of too. I keep my roster as accurate and realistic as possible, even though you can put overrides on. I don't like overrides from the standpoint that you can really do dumb trades, like you can trade Aaron Judge for like the number 4 reliever on some team's roster. I try to keep things as realistic as I possibly can. Now, understandably, all of us think we're realistic and or we're unbiased when we're making those moves, but we have our own biases. We understand when we're getting a little bit more out of the deal than the other team. Just so, I just try to keep it as close as I can there. Mark, the Angels will need so much. That's kind of my point there. Why are they looking to bring in, small, short-term answers at these positions? That's going to ruin their draft position. That's going to decrease the ability for young guys to make it on the big league roster in 2, 3, 4 years because those spots are taken by long-term contracts at the big league level rather than one-year deals that you can flip at the deadline to increase roster flexibility and get some pieces back in return as well. Christopher, Robbie Ray is good when healthy. He's never healthy, though. Yeah, that is the worry, though. I think that's more because of the injury that he had recently with the Mariners, where he kind of blew out his arm for a year and change. I think he's going to get back to that level of pitcher. The question is, how far back does he get, and how much is he able to pitch? How much does he really have left in the tank, I think is the question there. Miami Marlins fans, I will bring you 4 World Series. I guess you picked the Marlins. Alrighty, Mike McCain, the Padres are the same signing all those people for all those $300 million contracts, and now they're at a point where they're already starting to sell everybody off like I knew they would. I don't necessarily agree with that. Look at the way the Padres have been conducted their business under A.J. Preller. If you're new here, I've gone over this several times, but let me just go ahead and refresh your memory. Preller, when he first gets the job there, brings in the Uptons, he brings in Kimbrel, really goes all out to try to compete. Obviously, it doesn't work. They trade away those guys at the deadline and recoup their value. They go all in for Juan Soto, give up the farm and then some to bring in Juan Soto. They get 2 runs at a postseason with him. It doesn't work. That lands flat on their face. They're able to turn that around and recoup some value in return as well. Last year, they go out there and trade for Dylan Cease and Luis Arraez. Both of those guys are now going to be free agents after this upcoming season. Doesn't look like they're going to sign extensions, so now those guys are looking to be flipped for possibly some type of return to recoup some value once again. It's just the way the Padres have acted whenever they make these types of moves. Now, as far as free agents, I do understand your point there. They have spent significant money. Xander Bogaerts, you got to expect more out of him when you give him that kind of money. Manny Machado has been a great deal since they made that one as well. Fernando Tatis, the beginning there was a little bit forgettable with him having to be suspended for 80 games, but now that he's at the major league level and in the outfield, he looks comfortable out there. The pitching staff looks solid when it's healthy, but that was the issue last year. A lot of that rotation was injured at different points. They've done a great job building that bullpen on a shoestring budget the last couple of years as well, and I'd like to see what they do in a trade for Cease and Arraez. What do they get back? I think it's going to be something that's at least major league level to help them out at the major league level or with their major league roster and not just prospects in return. So we could see a real baseball for baseball trade. For instance, say Dylan Cease is traded to the Baltimore Orioles. Say you bring in Heston Hira and maybe one of their starting pitchers, number 4 or number 3 type of starter back. Say it's Grayson Rodriguez that you bring back in return and maybe Hurstad, and you send back Cease and maybe one other piece. That would be a massive return in exchange for Dylan Cease, and that would be a great trade, I think, for both clubs. The Orioles at least get a number 1 for their rotation for 1 year. You'd have to be able to re-sign him for a long-term deal after that, but that'd be a trade that would at least give their rotation a big boost. Now, would I give up Grayson Rodriguez and Hurstad in that trade? Probably not. I would look to do something smaller. I'm not looking at the trade or the rosters or their values in front of me at the moment, but that's just something that they could look to do. But for the Padres, they've done a nice job of getting into big-time situations with big contracts and big trade value, big trade pieces like Juan Soto, and then quickly getting out of those deals if they're unable to make it work long-term. Cowboys Nation, then ask your Orioles owner to spend. Why develop and keep all the prospects? Don't hate, listen. Don't hate, appreciate, listen to Mike, learn. That's kind of what we've been talking about with the Orioles, is that they've traded away prospects now in 2 straight off seasons, for Flaherty at the deadline and now for Corbin Burns, and now they're going to have to do it again for another starting pitcher to help out their rotation. And I get it. That's what they feel like they have to do. Ownership is willing to spend to a certain point. I get they're a small market team. They don't necessarily have the money to go out there and spend. Their biggest contract didn't really work out in franchise history, 7 for 161 to Chris Davis. But at a certain point, you're going to have to spend the money. So we'll see where they go financially with a starting pitcher. Ray came back late last season. I thought he had a few decent starts, looked more like conditioning. That was kind of my thoughts as well on Ray. Just needs to kind of have a full offseason to kind of get his wind back, kind of like DeGrom and Molly for the Rangers. Had to kind of get their feet wet at the major league level, show that they could still do it, complete the rehab process, and then build up their conditioning in the offseason, build up their arm strength. That way they're ready to go on opening day. Hardwick, AL West will be between Texas and Seattle, maybe Houston, just because it's Houston, and I hate the Astros. There's a lot of fan bases that do hate the Astros. I will say that. They're a very polarizing team. Either you like them or you hate them. You're never really in between. For Seattle, though, they need to add some They need to add some hitting to that lineup before I consider them a contender in the AL West. Rangers just need to finish off this offseason by bringing in a closer. I believe they will do that. For the Astros, they just need to move on from Ryan Presley and use that money to bring in one more bat to replace Kyle Tucker. Now, would they be better than last year when they had Bregman and Tucker and Presley in that roster? I would say they're probably better last year. But I don't think they're necessarily going to be great, as great as they were last year, because the pieces they brought in, while good, will be difference-making for them. They won't be quite as good as they were last year. I love the addition of Christian Walker, but I think there's more that they're having go out the door than what they're bringing in, at least on paper. I could be wrong, but for right now, I think Houston's still a good team. I think they've extended their window here to at least stay competitive in a very difficult division with the likes of the Rangers and the Mariners, and the A's are coming up as well. But Houston, I think, still is right there at the top with the Texas Rangers. Mike Lopez, I'm so glad we didn't trade Andy Pages to the Angels. Thanks for saying no on that trade, Artie Moreno. Artie Moreno is a special one. Seattle has a stud core starting rotation. Couldn't agree more. Best rotation in Major League Baseball as far as I'm concerned. But I think it was for 1 year. I think Castillo's traded, and I think we're going to see some younger guys again come up through the minor league system and see if they can latch hold at that number 5 spot once Castillo is traded, and then kind of use the money from Castillo's deal to bring in some offensive talent. Whatever return they do get back, for instance, say it's the Orioles, maybe Mountcastle comes in there, but I would expect some offense in return for a Luis Castillo. Even the Cincinnati Reds are a team that could be a fit for Castillo as well. Maybe they give him back Marte. That would be part of the return that they got originally for Luis Castillo. Maybe they revisit those talks as well. Roy Mike Lopez, facts. Thank you. Appreciate you guys joining us. I do see the super chat there. I'm going to get to it here in just a second, Christopher. I do appreciate the support. Thank you guys very much. I know there's so many comments here. I'm very sorry if I do miss some of these guys. BBC, welcome in. Do you see the Jays trading Vladdy to the Cubs if they don't make any significant signings? At the trade deadline, very possibly. Right now, not a chance. They're going to try to make a go of it and try to win a series, at least get to the postseason as a wild card. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But we'll see what they do. Let's see here. But how do you justify it to your fan base that you trade away a player that you've gotten attached to, so let's say, hypothetically, the Marlins, and it was Christian Yelich? You say it's a better baseball move. You make it about the future of your team. You say, hey, it's about the writing on the wall. We're the Blue Jays. We don't have any long-term contracts to really hope upon. We have Chris Jimenez, who's at least going to keep things afloat defensively, but he's not exactly an aircraft carrier for an offensive piece. So we're trading away Vladdy at the deadline to recoup some value before we lose him for nothing in free agency. And don't worry, fan base, we'll invest the money in free agency, and maybe we even bring back Vladdy at in the offseason. That's how they usually end up selling these things. Welcome in, Hank. Appreciate you joining us. Mike, Cowboys Nation, Dodgers have the number 5 farm system in the whole league, and we keep scouting elite 16-year-old baseball players from Mexico, Korea, Dominican, Taiwan, and Venezuela. That's what the Dodgers have really done to keep that farm system churning. I will say that. They've done a great job at that. No shade, Mike Lewis, but it's not from pure draft picks. Some were acquired via trade, etc. Most of the teams who have better farms and brought their guys up or moved them. I get your point there, but the Orioles have kind of short-circuited their success already. The bigger point for the Orioles that I've been making for the past 3 weeks now is that you really have to capitalize on the value of the contracts that are on your books right now. Holiday, Henderson, Rutschman, Hurstead, Cowser, all those guys are going to be at the big league level, taking up very little of your salary. And with Rutschman behind the plate, a real position of weakness across Major League Baseball, you have the ace up your sleeve with him as an offensive juggernaut behind the plate, to where you can still have another offensive piece at first and at DH while having some great offense from your catching spot. Utilize that versatility, utilize that ace up your sleeve, and spend the money on starting pitching right now when those contracts are so cheap. Then once those guys do start to cost some money, you either replace them with some prospects that you haven't traded away, because now you've kept those guys so you didn't have to trade them to bring in some starting pitching, or you keep those guys and then bring up some starting pitching on your development side of things, or trade some of the younger guys that you have left at that point for some more controllable pitching at that point. But that's where things are at right now as far as the Orioles in my mind. Tom, do you see Flaherty possibly signing with the Angels to stay with his native Southern California? I have heard some rumors about that, but we shall see. I don't necessarily buy it. I think he's going to go to possibly the Braves or the Blue Jays, teams that are really going to spend at the top levels. If they're unable to bring in a Santander, maybe Moreno goes out on a limb and spends big money on something like that, but we shall see. Anthony, Mike, have you ever thought about starting shows for the NBA free agency, NFL free agency, NHL free agency, and doing a soccer show that covers international transfer window? Soccer I know very little about. I'm not a huge soccer fan, so I wouldn't do that when I'm not knowledgeable enough on it. NBA, I do cover the trade deadline and free agency windows for that one. NFL, I do the same, and the NHL. We get massive numbers as far as viewership when we do those shows. Well over 200 people, concurrent watchers, all at the same time. We gained several subscribers on those days. You guys can go back and look at some of those channels, or some of those watches that we've done. MLB trade deadline. We cover all the trade deadlines in professional sports. MLB, NFL, NBA, and NHL. And it's always a riot. Really, I take off of work anyway with my current job. We'll see what this coming year is going to hold. Like I said, I'm making big changes behind the scenes, and I'm really hoping this channel can really grow and help with those changes. But trying to make this thing work a lot better for you guys, bringing you guys consistent Major League Baseball content that you guys have really responded to. That was my first pillar here at the Upside, and we're going to keep doing it in perpetuity. We're not stopping this, so make sure you join us every single night as we're going to keep you guys updated from the latest for Major League Baseball's hot stove season. Alrighty. Let's see here. You wouldn't hate the signing of Max on a 1 year. Main point is one guy, Jack or Luis, in my opinion, doesn't solidify our rotation. I would agree. I think that they need a number one first and foremost, though. Bringing in some supplemental help, though, would only aid in their rotation as far as I'm concerned. They have some injury guys coming back like Bautista in the bullpen, Kramer as well. That I think Max Scherzer, as a veteran influence for a young rotation, could really impart some wisdom to those guys. So we'll see what they do. I just think they should continue to add whatever they possibly can to that rotation. Alrighty, Christopher, the Astros and Cubs tanked in the early 2010s. Astros were able to draft Altuve, Bregman, Correa, and Springer the same way. The Royals did the same. Yes, the Jays could possibly be heading down that road. Angels, with the moves that they've made so far, and if they make these other moves for Santander, would have had the chance to do something like that, but it looks like they're going to short-circuit it. Alrighty, let's check out the super chat here. Apologize, Chris, just getting to it now, finally. San Francisco and Anaheim have horrific futures, no farm systems. Great show. Hit the like and subscribe button. Well, thank you for hitting that like and subscribe. I will say that first and foremost. San Francisco does have a weaker farm system than originally thought. Luciano didn't really hit the way they had thought. Same with Harrison. Anaheim does have a horrible farm system, but it has improved a little bit in most scouts' eyes, but it's still nowhere near being productive enough to really push their chips to the center yet and try to build their Major League roster. I would still be trying to sell pieces off of that Major League roster to build for my future. I would not be signing long-term deals. I keep telling you guys my theory of when you're a rebuilding club. You sign short-term, 1-year deals, 2-year deals maybe at the longest, and at low-value deals. So we're talking $1 to $5 million. Low-cost contracts that you can easily flip at the deadline. You don't have to eat money long-term on those deals, and you can really recoup some serious value in return for those deals. Now to your point of having San Francisco and the Angels in the same conversation, as far as their prospect systems, that's the only way they're comparable. But to me, I think the flexibility that the Giants really have going forward is they have more on their major league roster than the Angels do at any point. You look at having Webb as your number one. Which one's better, Kikuchi or Webb? Which one's better, Adames or an 80-game season for Mike Trout, I guess, is their best player right now, or a full season for Anthony Santander? My point is the Giants have much more to hope on at the major league level, that their minor league system still has those pieces in their system that didn't exactly produce yet, but they still have some really good prospect status there. Like Luciano, while he hasn't worked out for the Giants, they went ahead and made the decision to bring in Adames to kind of take his spot at the major league club. You can easily flip him to another team that's looking to capitalize on what he once was as a prospect. I would do so immediately if I was the Giants before he loses more value. But I think as far as the farm system, that's the only way the Angels and Giants are comparable. I think the money that the Giants are going to have, and with Buster Posey at the helm, they're going to be in very different places as a team, as far as a franchise, than where the Angels are in a year from now. Heel, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. Bregman needs to realize, yes, he walks. Yes, he makes good contact. Yes, he's a fantastic fielder. But outside of Minute Maid, he's a solid bat, not a fantastic bat. Honestly, I still think he's an impact bat. And I think depending on where he goes, he could really embrace his ceiling with the Boston Red Sox. I think that Green Monster really would work to his advantage. Now, there are some ballparks where right-handed hitters just usually do not perform well. For instance, if you went to the Mariners, yikes. That would be a worse place I think you could sign for his offensive numbers. But the leadership skills he brings are off the chart. He's a fantastic fielder. Yes, he has versatility all over the diamond. You can play him at first, second, third, or short. I think he'd be able to pick up first base rather easily. But I think his best defensive position right now is third base. And he's a consummate professional. He's always been great in the playoffs. He's known nothing but playoff success. This past year was the first time he hadn't made it to the ALCS. Every single time before that, all to the ALCS. He's a great leader, and I think he'd be a great fit on any team looking to contend. The Tigers are trying to push things over the top to get and win the division. I think bringing in Bregman would really solidify their chances. And then, of course, if you missed the start of our live today, the dark horse team that I'm looking at is the Chicago Cubs. They say they're all in for 2025. They traded just for his teammate a couple of weeks ago in Kyle Tucker. If they bring in Bregman, that certainly would lead you to believe that they are certainly all in for 2025. How much money would they have left to address other need areas on that team? A bullpen option, a number 5 starter, remains to be seen. But if they really bring in Alex Bregman, I would really like their chances to win that division over some of the other options in that division. For instance, Pittsburgh, they made some nice additions to that roster, but they need more offense than what they brought in so far. I thought Nathaniel Lowe would have been a great piece for them to get at first base, to provide them some professional at-bat stability at first base, a well-rounded, all-around player to kind of help out that young team. They've got some really good pitching, but the hitting is still lacking as far as I'm concerned. Reds, for me, are a little bit lacking in both the rotation and in the lineup. I still think they'll address those needs, but for right now, Bregman would make the Cubs better on paper. And then you look at the Cardinals. They're rebuilding. Now, my favorite to win the division is still the Brewers. I think that would still be the case if they brought in Bregman to the Chicago Cubs, but that would certainly help make it a lot more likely that they could win the division or at least compete for a wild card spot in the National League. Cowboys Nation, I could put a whole list of international youngsters the Dodgers have signed in the last year, like the 2 shortstops headed by Emil Morales and Yoendry Vargas. I mean, they have done a great job with international free agents. That's the one way they've kept their farm system up and going. I would like to see them continue to build through that way. Honestly, that's kind of why Major League Baseball wants to do an international draft, because they want to stop having these teams with big names like the Yankees and Dodgers continue to develop the minor league prospect pool and mine that thing over and over and over again, get the pieces that they want because of their name. It should be equally distributed. The league wants parity, and the league would also like to reduce the criminal nature of some of the ways players come over from international leagues as well, and avoid the coyote situation, some of the scary things that we've seen from guys that like Leonis Martin, former Texas Ranger. The way he came over, I invite you guys to check out his story. Yasiel Puig and the people that brought him over. Also another one to keep in mind. Lots of scary situations that Major League Baseball would just like to, be able to eliminate from having to happen at any point anyway, or at any point, and just be able to institute that international draft. Yes, Players Association isn't exactly a fan of it because they want the free agent dollars, but right now it's just not working for parity in the league, and it would be safer for the players in the long run. I think they will get an international draft. By the way, when they got the CBA done last time, what were they supposed to have gotten done in the first month afterward? The international draft. What's the one thing that still hasn't been done? The international draft. And baseball's getting a long list of things that are going to have to be done before we get to another possible lockout, hold, or strike situation in a few years. So we'll see if they make some headway in the next few years. Welcome in, Drew. Appreciate you joining us. Honestly, I think San Francisco Farm is just underdeveloped. I'd agree there. I'd say that they've had some poor returns on investment so far. I wouldn't say that it's terrible. I wouldn't say that it's to the level of the Angels anyway. I'd say it's at least getting to that point. But I get what you're saying there. They just need to get better returns on investment. Drew, in another year or two, in the minors, their players will be better. But again, that's the same with all other clubs as well. Tom, I think the Giants have the number of hidden gems in young pitchers in their farm system. Again, they still have to get to the major leagues, and they haven't quite gotten the development they would like as of yet, which is why those young arms, as they continue to develop, they're going to really invest their free agent dollars, I believe, in position players. Kyle Tucker, Vlad Guerrero Jr., they're connected to Pete Alonso right now. Bo Bichette, they spend the money for Willie Adames, maybe even Alex Bregman this offseason. If they can get those position players locked in there and really, I talked about this a few different times about Pete Alonso. If they brought him in, they'd do it for two reasons. One, to clear the stink off of Farhan Zaidi with the Giants organization, object number one. Number two, they haven't had a power hitter at the level of Barry Bonds since he retired. Bringing in Pete Alonso would be something that put butts in seats and really turn this, entire franchise's outlook around, bring some positivity back into that clubhouse, and we'll see what ultimately happens. I like where the Giants are headed, though. I just think it's a year early to compete, or for them to be winning the division or competing for a wild card spot. I think they're going to finish on the outside looking in, but they're definitely better than they were a year ago. Alrighty, let's try to wrap up the conversation here as quick as we possibly can. I got to go to work early tomorrow, so I do apologize, but wanted to have a little bit longer of a live with you guys. So if you guys want to hit that like and subscribe, we would greatly appreciate it. Most recent Dodgers signings, Rivera, Brian Lara, I hope he's better than the way the Lara that worked out for the Rangers anyway. What was that, 10 years ago? That did not end well. Heel, I think the Astros should give the Giants a call to try to trade Presley, maybe even try to get Doval. I don't think the Giants would have interest in Presley. Honestly, as far as a Doval acquisition, if they trade Presley, would make some sense. So maybe trading Presley to another team like the Tigers, and then going back to the Giants and getting Doval from them, that would be interesting. Whitman, hey, okay. Mike, the Dodgers spent heavily in their scouting team that all go over all over the world seeking new addition to their minor league system. I think teams like the Rangers do that very well. The Dodgers have done that very well. The Yankees have as well. You can see where teams that are very good at bringing in international free agents have invested their time and money. The Padres have done that in years past. Giants are getting better at it. I think they'll do even better now with Buster Posey at the helm. Rupper's their guy. So is McDonald. Okay. Rupp is going to be solid. Harrison looks solid with more experience. I agree. Harrison, I think, could be a piece for them. I wouldn't give up on him yet. But Luciano, I think they've given up on him, at least as a shortstop, because they now have Willie Adames. And I think they have Chapman locked up as well at third base. I think they could bring in another shortstop, maybe to play second at some point. But if they just want to continue to bring in bat after bat after bat, shuffle those bats around, maybe one of those becomes a DH, however they take it. They're just trying to bring in bats right now. Luciano is the piece that I really liked from the Giants farm system that I was keeping my eye on for the last 3 years. Ultimately, it looks like they're going to move in a different direction, and I think they should trade him at this point and recoup as much value as they can. Alrighty, welcome in, King. Welcome in, everybody. Appreciate you guys joining us. We're about to wrap up here. We'll check up on X here, see if anything is happening tonight. College football, 2 games were today. 1 was postponed until tomorrow due to the attack down there in New Orleans. Best wishes to those that were affected by that. I know some in the sports community were actually affected as well. Best wishes to the families that were involved, and something to really keep your eyes on as well. Thoughts to the families out there involved in the one in Vegas as well. Really hoping for the speedy recovery for all involved, and well wishes, and our sincere thoughts and prayers are with the family members who passed away. So, it's a new year, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Thank you guys for joining us over the last 24 hours. Had a lot of fun talking baseball with you. I don't necessarily like to stay up late and watch the ball drop anymore for New Year's Rockin' Eve or whatever. But I still like to enjoy New Year's with my family, and I got to do that, and I got to talk baseball with you guys. Got to talk baseball again with you guys today, just like we're going to do again tomorrow and every day thereafter. But my thoughts will be with those families that were affected by those attacks over the next couple of days. So best wishes to those people that were involved or affected by those issues. King, after the trade for Crochet, where do you think Boston's farm system ranks now? I would still put them borderline top 10, maybe a little bit higher. They have some really good top end talent still with Marcelo Mayer, Roman Anthony, Abreu just came up to the big league level and had a great rookie year. Red Sox are in a great position. They need to invest in some, really big bats. For me, they need a right-handed power bat more than anything else in that lineup. If it's not going to be Bregman, I think it could end up being, a veteran like JD Martinez or Justin Turner as well. Don't tell Dodgers fans. Okay. Mike, the Dodgers are innovators when it comes to scouting. Yes, they are. We're the first team to set an academy in the Dominican. We were the ones that changed barriers in baseball. The Dodgers do certainly do that. I will say that. Navarro, King, I don't know, but their starting rotation is looking good. Boston does have a very good starting rotation, at least by the looks of it. Some good young options there. Bayo. Now they've added Crochet as the one. Bueller, I think, is probably going to be in that 2-3-4 mix. Sandoval is kind of going to be one of their swingmen, possibly a spot starter at times, maybe even wins a job in spring training. But they've done a nice job building up that rotation. And if by some miracle they were able to convince Rafael Devers to move off of third base, they bring in Bregman, they trade for Castillo, that would be a great rotation and a great lineup. I think that'd be having the best offseason the Red Sox have had in at least the last 10 years. But we'll see what they do. I think they're going to miss on Bregman, though, because of their inability to convince Devers to play first base. I don't think they'd want Devers to play second base or they wouldn't want Bregman to play second base because they have Story there and a lot of money invested there already. Not to say that you wouldn't want to bring in Bregman anyway for a better bat. I'm just saying the money doesn't make sense for a team that's looking to operate in ways like the Rays and A's for decades have, and I just don't see them doubling down on that position. Alrighty, King, how good do you think Roman Anthony is? I think he has a chance to win Rookie of the Year next year. I think he's going to have a chance to break with the big league club to start the season next year. If not, I think he's up by May at the latest. And I think he has a real good chance to win the American League Rookie of the Year. VPC ZX, if Mexico City got a team, the league would be lit. That's not going to happen, not anytime soon, just because of travel concerns alone. That's a long, long, long flight. But the finances, I mean, you're talking about an untapped market. You'd have a whole nation behind you, just like they would in Toronto. But I think Montreal is more likely. I think Nashville is going to get a team before that happens as well, and a few other teams or a few other cities that are stateside as well. Joe, welcome in. First time I think I've seen you in our chat anyway. If you guys are new here, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Red Sox news today from John Heyman, essentially just throwing a whole bunch of cold water on Bregman going to the Boston Red Sox. The reporting that we had up until yesterday stated that the Red Sox and Tigers were the favorite there. Red Sox had the money, were willing to do it, and it sounded like their plan was to move Devers over to first base and play him at third. Tigers, of course, seem to be his preferred destination, at least for Bregman, but their money isn't quite there yet. If they don't get the money there for the Tigers, thought process was coming into today that he would go to Boston, they would move Devers to first, Casas and Yoshida possibly be traded. Castillo could come in as a starting pitcher. Cold water all over that. John Heyman says Devers doesn't want to move, and I don't expect him to ultimately go to Boston right now. He says the favorites for Bregman right now are the Blue Jays and the Detroit Tigers, with the headline of our show, the Chicago Cubs have entered the chat as a dark horse for Alex Bregman. Thanks for the forum. Really do appreciate that. Thank you for joining us, Tom. Only if the economy there support the team. I don't know how prosperous the city is. Again, it's travel issues. Money would be big no matter what you do down there. But as far as Mexico City is concerned, travel would be the biggest reason why it wouldn't happen. There's no way you could get teams to travel that far, for a 3-game series and then immediately play the next day in Seattle. It's not going to happen. Now, maybe you get them to play a 3-game series in Mexico City, a 3-game series in Houston, another 3-game series in Texas, and just break down the travel that way. But I don't think they would do that. I think, like I said, there's more teams, more cities in the U.S. and in Canada that are far closer for travel considerations that are going to get a team first. Nashville is an absolutely rabid baseball town right now. They're going to get a team. Montreal, I'd expect to get a team, and a few others as well. I'd keep my eyes on Vancouver as one of the top 5 teams that could get a team as well. Mike, condolences to those families, absolutely. Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us. Sounds like Bregman wants to go to Detroit. Yes, it does. They're silently pretty good. They are. Prayers for those affected in NOLA, Vegas, and at the Target in LA. Yes, absolutely. Young guys starting to come around. Plus, Tarek is a monster. Absolutely. And then Heel. Do you think the Mariners crack and trade someone like Logan Gilbert for another great player, a bat in return, because it looks like nobody wants that Castillo contract? I don't think that they don't want the contract. I just think they want a big return for one of their best starting pitchers. When I say one of their best, it's one of their best compensated and still a very good starting pitcher. They're just not going to get a huge return for him because he's being paid like it already. Now, if you give up a very comparable starting pitcher who's got a lot lower contract and a lot more potential for what he could mean for you, some controllable years, those guys have infinitely more value. I don't think it's necessarily the contract that's the problem for these teams looking at Castillo. I think it's the Mariners just looking to get what they could possibly get out of Castillo, but I think they're going to move him at some point. King, bro, aren't all owners of MLB teams billionaires? Bring them cheap, or them being cheap should be unacceptable. Shaking my head. Billionaires, not all of them. If I remember correctly, there's several that are in the millionaires categories. There are consortiums, there's groups of owners that are millionaires together, but together they bring up billions. But there are some teams out there that don't have the market size to be able to capitalize on their team. For instance, New York's market, they make a lot more money from TV, from apparel, from radio contracts than, say, a team like the Kansas City Royals, who have, by landmass, a far bigger footprint, but a lot less people to actually buy and spend their money on that content, to go to the ballpark and see the team. Just like in politics anyway, they say land doesn't vote, people do, or people do. Same kind of thing with baseball, where your market size matters as far as people, not necessarily the land mass that you cover. For instance, the Minnesota Twins, you have both of the Dakotas. You probably have a little bit of Idaho and Wyoming as well. Rockies probably cover a little bit there as well. But you have a huge landmass that Twins fans are all in that area. Far big landmass. But do they draw? They absolutely draw. For Minnesota, they draw. But do they draw like the Yankees draw? No, they don't. Do they draw apparel sales? Do they draw television contracts the way the Yankees do? No. And I keep using the Yankees as this, but any big market team is what I'm trying to say here is. But different market sizes act differently. You have to address your team in different ways. Baltimore has to go about adding talent in a different way than another team in a big market would, and that's just the way baseball's done. I mean, if we could all wish, we were all in the same playing field as far as pooling our money and roster resources together, and our owners all had the same money to work with, and Cohen didn't have this big money that he could spend over any other team, sure. But that's not the world we live in. That's a utopia. It's never going to happen, so there's no use really arguing about it. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Christopher, good night. All Joe, any chance Santander could go to the Red Sox? No, they're pretty much locked up in their outfield. Looks like Abreu's probably going to take one of the outfield spots once Roman Anthony comes up. I'd say Abreu probably goes over to left. They put Anthony in right and Duran's in center. Yoshida's going to be your DH. There's not a spot for Santander there, even though they are looking to upgrade their offense. I know they touched base anyway with Santander. I think the only way they'd be able to do that is if they were able to offload the contract of Yoshida. But as it stands, I don't believe that's going to be the case. Alrighty, thank you guys for joining us. Happy New Year, everybody. Our thoughts and prayers are with all those from the attacks over the last 24 hours. Wish everybody who's been affected by that, that they get better soon, a speedy recovery, and those that were affected more gravely. Our thoughts and prayers are with you as well. But Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us, and let's have a great 2025. We've had a great day, lots of success, lots of subscribers over the last 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks, over 500 subscribers. Just want to thank you one last time. Thank you for the super chat today as well, Christopher. Goes a long way to help out our channel. If you are new here and want to join us here at the Upside, hit that like and subscribe. We'll be live again tomorrow night around 9 o'clock, keeping you guys up to date on all the latest from MLB's Hot Stove. Happy New Year, everybody.